Hey, time for your Friday history briefing. So today, this is our COVID-19 virtual edition of our IU history briefing using our Zoom software. I was able to put this picture in the background because here, my finger disappears when I do that, is the woman we're going to talk about today, Lettie Iva Wadsworth. You'll also see up here at the top, you can see her name up here. She was from Odin, Indiana. This is her yearbook photo from 1922 that you can see here. We're going to talk a little bit about her because she was the first woman veteran that we know of that attended IU. So we're going to tell a little bit of her story and kind of what happened. So she was born in 1882 in Ragglesville, Indiana, which is a little southeast of Bloomington, down near Odin. She graduated in 1897 from high school in a class of 9 students, but then we don't really know what she did after that. She kind of disappears from our radar, not really able to track her until about 1910 when she enrolled in a nursing program in Chicago. So she would have been about 31. So we're not real sure what she did from 18 to 31, but she would have been about 31 at that point. And then she began working as a nurse in Chicago. But in 1915, she signed up with the Red Cross as part of the British Expeditionary Force because Britain was already involved in World War I. So she signed up with the British Expeditionary Force as a Red Cross nurse. She served in a French hospital in Paris, taking care of French soldiers during the war. And when she returned in the fall of 1916, she enrolled at IU at the age of 34. And she started pursuing her degree. As it became more and more apparent that the American military was going to be getting into World War I, she wrote this letter. It's really long. I'm just going to read a little bit of it that was published in several local papers. She says, "One often hears people say that they feel sorry for the Red Cross nurses. People often say to me, 'You have already done your part. It is a pity if you should have to go back.' I cannot understand anyone feeling that way about it. To me, it is as though a great magnet were drawing me back to a work which I should not have left at all. I could do no more keep from going, or at least wishing to do so, than water could keep from flowing downhill. Just about a year ago, while a student at Indiana University, the realization that our own American boys, our IU students, were about to lay down their lives as our toll in this awful struggle came upon me in full force, and I guess I rather went to pieces over it. I know my grades suffered noticeably, but try however hard I might to concentrate my mind when I went to my zoology class and looked into the happy, intelligent faces of those boys, and when I saw them again in chemistry and still again in physics, I could think only of those boys in the trenches and how they would be back at our base hospital in France." So these are some things that many veterans would sort of recognize that when you still have friends or folks that you served with that are still serving, that sort of desire to be back over there. And so she ends it by saying, "I do not know why it should have struck me so deeply, but it seemed to me then that if our Indiana boys went to France and I could not go too, it would kill me. And when I tried to sleep at night and heard the college chimes ringing each hour of the night, it seemed to me it was like the signal of that mournful wildcat whistle of the ambulance trains that used to awaken us to warn us that 300 more wounded soldiers were being brought to us and that we must hasten to care for them." So the American Expeditionary Force, when it entered into World War I, did the same thing that the British had done, because there were a lot of rules and laws about the American military and the roles that women could serve in. They were very limited to the nursing corps, and even those nurses were very limited on what they could do and where they could serve. So they used the Red Cross nurses and the Red Cross doctors to set up Red Cross hospitals as the forward field hospitals for the military. So she, when the U.S. entered the war, she returned for 15 months of Red Cross nursing duty. She served on the front lines with the American Expeditionary Force, and then as part of the Army of Occupation after the war ended. After that, she returned to IU to come back and finish her degree. But by then, we were having another round of Spanish influenza was coming through. And she actually stopped taking classes to become the IU nurse that was taking care of our sick ward, our infirmary at that point. And so she oversaw the infirmary and managed it. So like think of a student worker. Now she's a non-traditional student, but you got a student worker that's a nurse that has served 2 tours in World War I that's kind of running the student infirmary and sick ward. Finally, at the age of 40, she graduated in 1922. And after that, she went to serve as a public health nurse in Owen County. And she advocated for child welfare and family issues and health education and all these other sort of things throughout her career. She did come back. She did get a master's degree from Columbia at one point, and she also did some graduate work at IU that she didn't finish. And she shows up in a lot of records. We had a hard time tracking her down for the longest time because she actually got married in 1941 to Thomas Elmer Routledge. And she shows up in university records after that as Mrs. Thomas Elmer Routledge. But before that, everything is Lettie Iva Wadsworth. So she eventually retired from public health nursing. She passed away in 1964, and she's buried in Terre Haute, Indiana. But Lettie Iva Wadsworth is the first woman veteran. The Red Cross nurses and folks that served with the Red Cross in the American Expeditionary Force are considered veterans because of the nature of their service and the work that they did, even though they weren't in the armed forces of the United States. And that's a whole podcast or video for another time. But she's our first woman veteran that we know of that came to IU. We've talked about doing something to sort of memorialize that or do something for her. We're not quite sure what that's going to be, but we're going to work on something. Maybe a scholarship, maybe a program. We'd like to have that. So anyway, there's your Friday history update for today. And it kind of goes well to talk about Spanish influenza while we're in the middle of this pandemic and the work that she did in relation to that. We'll see you next Friday, and have a good one.